Urgent. The judge of the National Court, Santiago Pedraz, orders an investigation into the meetings of Pedro Sanchez's dirty network at the headquarters of the State Attorney General's office. Let's begin. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Precautionary Measures. As you can see, we are still at the Provincial Court of Badajoz following the final stage of the trial against the brother of the Prime Minister, David Sánchez. And meanwhile, new and very concerning information keeps coming up. By the way, after that information we revealed exclusively in the last few hours regarding precautionary measures about the possible indictment of the Socialist Party as an organization. A criminal case that is already being prepared, which is being considered by the National Court Judge Santiago Pedraz, precisely because of the role of the Socialist Party in covering the expenses of the Socialist Party's dirty tricks operation under Pedro Sánchez, whose intention then was to sabotage the work of judges, prosecutors, and civil guards who were investigating. The very president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, his inner circle, his wife, Begoña Gómez, his brother David Sánchez. Well, we have just learned in the last few minutes of a new decision by the judge of the National Court, Santiago Pedraz, who, of course, has reactivated the investigation of the case with a tremendous series of investigative measures. Among them, there is one that especially stands out, and that is that Judge Pedraz has ordered the State Attorney General's office to report on the meetings that were held. The PSOE's fixer, Lere Diez, and other members of the socialist underworld, such as the businessman Javier Pérez Dolcet or the lawyer Jacobo Teguelo. Meetings that took place between 2024 and 2025 precisely at the headquarters of the State Attorney General's office. This is extremely serious because what we are revealing is that indeed during Álvaro García Ortiz's time as Attorney General, there were possibly meetings taking place right at the headquarters of the State Attorney General's office. And that's why Judge Pedraz is now requesting this information from the Prosecutor's office, which is currently headed by Teresa Peramato, who, as you know and as we've mentioned many times here on Medidas Cautelares, might even be worse than Álvaro García Ortiz. That's how the situation stands right now, especially with this series of investigative measures that Judge Pedraz has ordered. The president of the Socialist Party, Cristina Narbona, is also being called as a witness. Numerous civil guard officers are being called, as well as other lawyers implicated in the scheme. And something else also especially catches our attention. The summons as a suspect comes after the lawyer Leticia de la Hoz, Coldo Garcia's lawyer, asked Judge Pedraz to call her to testify as a suspect. Well, Judge Pedraz has also agreed to this procedure, so in the coming weeks, let's say that in Judge Santiago Pedraz's court, numerous investigative procedures will take place. Precisely about this very serious case, which is these dirty dealings of Pedro Sanchez's Socialist Party, which, as I was saying, as we have reported in recent hours in Medidas Cautelares, could even end up with the Socialist Party itself being charged as a legal entity for the crime of criminal organization. And we can't even rule out other crimes such as bribery, not to mention that in the National Court, Judge Moreno is also investigating. Well, the Socialist Party for that alleged illegal financing, so in the coming months, the Socialist Party could be charged with several crimes. This is very serious information, and as we said, Judge Pedraz is reactivating the investigation into the PSOE's dirty dealings with this series of proceedings. As you know, this is being investigated within the framework of the CEPI scheme, but we also can't forget what's happening right here in Badajoz at the Provincial Court. We are now in the final stretch of the trial against David Sánchez, the brother of the Prime Minister, for the crime of influence peddling and malfeasance in office, specifically for securing David Sánchez a job through favoritism at the Provincial Council of Badajoz. First with that position as coordinator of conservatories, which he ended up turning into head of the Performing Arts Office. Well, in this session, as we are already approaching the final stretch, the parties are delivering their closing arguments. Among the parties formally appearing in this procedure, the private prosecutors and the prosecutor's office have begun. And it should be said that, well, the popular accusations, among which are Justicia Europa, Acto Teodir, and Vox, are being made clear. All the irregularities that occurred during that favoritism, that hiring of David Sánchez in the provincial council. They're talking about a tailor-made suit. They're talking about a comic opera, precisely using operatic terms in this trial. And of course, while the popular accusations have made that statement, so has the Popular Party, right? Which is part of those popular accusations, and they have made that statement about all the alleged criminal acts committed by David Sánchez, as well as by the former socialist president of the Provincial Council, Miguel Ángel Gallardo. And the rest of the accused, in total there are 11, while the prosecutor's office has arrived, as expected, with reductions, and has directly requested the acquittal of the 11 accused. That was expected. They had already done it before, and today in the trial, during the presentation of the final reports, they have indeed directly requested the acquittal of the 11 accused. But during today's hearing, there was an interesting, curious event. One of the presidents of Justicia Europa, which is one of the popular accusations involved in the case, Luis Maria Pardo, revealed that in the case file there is a report from the UCO, the Central Operative Unit of the Civil Guard, and that within that report, in some annexes, there are 5 emails forwarded by David Sánchez, no less, to a very mysterious email address, which is Pedro Sánchez 12 1212. It should be noted that in the UKO reports, at no point did the UKO manage to identify whether this Pedro Sánchez 12 is Pedro Sánchez's father or the president of the government himself, Pedro Sánchez. We have that unknown, but what I can assure you is that those emails forwarded by David Sánchez to Pedro Sánchez 12 to that email address, mysterious and enigmatic. Among other things, what was forwarded were the incompatibilities that some employees of the Badajoz Provincial Council had sent to David Sánchez himself, when his position was being created first as coordinator of the conservatories of Badajoz. Also, among the emails that David Sánchez forwarded to that mysterious email account, Pedro Sánchez 1212, there is a lease contract, and also the ownership of his bank accounts is included. That is, we're talking about that account which we don't know if it belongs to the father or to Pedro Sánchez himself, since David Sánchez sent him all his information. More personal, more private. We don't know if, as we said, it's the father, but in any case, the father. He could also have been the intermediary between David Sánchez and his brother Pedro Sánchez, because it must be said that 3 years after that email in which, well, the Provincial Court of the Diputación de Badajoz warned David Sánchez that in his case there was an incompatibility. Finally, that incompatibility was removed in the Diputación, and David Sánchez went from being the coordinator of the conservatories to the head of the Office of Performing Arts. And just like that, the incompatibility was removed in one fell swoop. That was revealed today by the president of Justicia Europa, Luis Maria Pardo, who acts as a private prosecutor in this case. And as we said, we're already in the final stretch of this case. David Sánchez, about the favoritism towards the brother of the Prime Minister. Any updates that come up, of course, we'll report them, and we'll keep reporting them here from Badajoz until the trial ends. And if not, then when we return to Madrid, to our studio, to our Medidas Cautelares studio. That's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, you can leave your opinions, share the video with whoever you want, and if you haven't already, you can become a member like the chosen ones for less than €3 a month, or like the supreme ones for less than €7 a month. You can also make contributions via Bizum at 627556370, 6,275,563.70. The most important thing, as I always say, is that this information reaches everyone, because information is power. See you soon.